Hey, this is Basketball Talk 77, and today's video is about James Harden. Now, earlier in the season, when James Harden was first traded to the Brooklyn Nets, I doubted that it would be successful. And this video is partially a response to my previous video, and is also partially just to talk about the new James Harden. But important thing is that early in the season I made a video that said that the James Harden trade was not a good idea, and I will leave a link to that video in the description just in case you want to see if any of my points held up or my reasoning. But I didn't think it would work out because, as many people had said, not only was their defense a problem, but also even in their offense, I wasn't sure that players that had been to that point isolation players could play together. Adding James Harden didn't make sense to me. I thought they probably should have added someone like Julius Randle and added more perimeter defense. But James Harden has proved me wrong in a lot of aspects. But my point still stands that three isolation stars cannot coexist together. I was not wrong in that part, but James Harden didn't stay an isolation player. He has become a much more well-rounded player that has also taken on the role of the major and primary ball handler and playmaker for the team. If you watch the highlights that I am playing of James Harden, many of them are assists. And this was not true before. Sure, occasionally there would be a good assist, and he still averaged many assists, but just the feeling of it while watching him was that it was almost always first to score, and many of his assists felt as though they just came from him having the ball in his hands the whole time. Now, I think it's good to take a quick recap of James Harden's career so that we can have more of an idea of why this season's stats are important. In 2012 the 13 season, he was traded to the Rockets, and he was the best player on the team. And so he started averaging a lot more field goals and already jumped up to 26 points, so one of the best players in the league. And 26 points was like 30 points is today. Or maybe not that much, but it still was even better back in 2012 to 13. And he kept averaging that 25, 26, 25, 27 points until in 2015 to 16, when Dwight Howard was no longer good enough to be a secondary player to him. He jumped up to 29 points to 30 points in the next season. And the important season is 2016 to 17, where I think things started to go downhill for his career. Now, the winning didn't stop. The statistics got better, but it just felt, at least to me, like a part of James Harden went away in that season. Because in this season, he had no secondary star. No Dwight Howard, no Chris Paul. This is the year in between. And it really made him have to carry the entire offense. So he not only became based his entire game off analytics, he was simply surrounded by a bunch of shooters that he would give the ball to if he couldn't score in the 24 seconds. This kind of super heavy isolation play, plus a pretty lack of defense, although he has gotten better at inside defense and perimeter defense, but we'll get to that later. This made him, in my opinion, a lot more one-dimensional. Yes, now he was averaging 30 points, 29 points, next season 30 points, but it was 30 points that had to come from him having many possessions, and he was still an amazing offensive player, but his playmaking, which many have known that have watched him closely, many have known that he has this playmaking skill, he really didn't use it that season much, despite averaging a lot of assists that year. I think he still wasn't as much of a ball handler as he could be, and his defense took a major hit. Now, in 2017 to 18, he only went up to 30 points, and he has Chris Paul on the team, and specifically the 2018 playoffs, he, in the conference finals, because of the high offense or high level and high amounts of isolation offense that he had played all season, even with Chris Paul, it left him relatively tired for the conference finals against the Warriors, especially on his own. And another reason is that he, since basing his game off analytics, had completely eliminated the mid-range from his collection of shots. And so, when he wasn't able to hit from three, there was no other shot attempt that he could take and make a good amount of them because of the purge of mid-range shots that he had done in the previous season. Now, this was the biggest moment of his career, the 2018 Conference Finals, the best chance he's ever had until perhaps this season of winning a championship, and the best chance he ever had with the Rockets. And because of the way he played the game, and without Chris Paul, when it was up to him to win the game in Game 7, he had a terrible game and missed like 30 shots, or something like that, like 33s. As a team, they missed 33s, but I think he missed something like a good amount of them. Anyway, the next season was his highest average scoring ever, and the next 2 years, 18-19 and 19-20, were very similar, despite the fact that one had Russell Westbrook and one didn't. But these seasons were the peak of James Harden statistically, but also, in my opinion, his worst years. My least favorite years of his, because this is where he became the most one-dimensional of his career. Scoring and nothing else. Little defense, and although he still was a great playmaker, a lot less playmaking than he could have, despite what the statistics show. And that was disappointing, and as it showed, as 2 second-round outs in a row, it didn't work for playoff success. And even for both seasons when he had other players, he never seemed to work with them. In 2019-20, when he played with Russell Westbrook, they almost always had to be played on different lines because James Harden became incompatible with other stars. And so, this was a major dampener on his legacy, and I believe that personally he could not win with the way he was playing. And that brings us up to this season where he gets traded from Houston to Brooklyn, and it is a situation where I wasn't sure he was able to have success. And this season he's averaged, at least in Brooklyn, 25 points, 11 rebounds, and 11 assists and 8.7 rebounds. And anytime that a player drops 9 points, you think it's a major fall off. But I actually think from 2019-20 to 2020-21, James Harden has actually gone better. And the reason I think this is that he has become a much better and more well-rounded player. Now he does a lot more playmaking, and he is a much better defender. And statistics don't back up this improvement, for sure. But in the end, just watching him, and even watching his highlights, show that he is a much different player than when he was with the Rockets. The James Harden that we knew from flashes of good defense or amazing playmaking, which was still present throughout his career, but in my opinion, most prevalent this year. They were flashes when we knew he could be all that. However, the super loaded offense stopped that. And so now, he has scaled back his offense. In my opinion, this is his best year ever. This is James Harden's best year. And he is the reason the Nets are winning. If James Harden didn't come to the Nets, they would be something like the 3rd or 4th seed. The Eastern Conference is, despite what it says, the top of the Eastern Conference, where contenders are, is actually very good. And the Nets are the 2nd seed right now, would probably be something around the 4th seed when it was just KD and Kyrie. Even with players like Jared Allen. James Harden is the reason that the Nets are successful, and he is the MVP of the team. When before this team probably couldn't have worked out, he has brought them together with his playmaking and his ability to take a lower role. Now, I believe personally that James Harden has if the Nets get the first seed or they win a championship or at least get far, James Harden has a good case for being the MVP in my opinion. The first part of the year was very bad for him, of course, considering that he obviously wasn't trying in the beginning with the Rockets. However, in his Brooklyn Nets days, he has made the team better than ever, and he is, if they ever turn out to be the 1 seed, the best player on one of the best teams. If the Nets turn out to be a top seed, it's because of the great play of James Harden. And I think that it's a much better James Harden to watch today that's willing to take less of a scoring role and become a more well-rounded player that we haven't seen it in a very long time since the days of OKC, and has become worse in later years as he's become more isolation heavy. But this year, James Harden has revolutionized his career, and therefore he is an MVP candidate, and he is the reason that the Brooklyn Nets have had success. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe and turn on more notifications for more content like this. If you would like to submit a comment for a video idea, you are free to, and I'll take it under consideration to make a video about it. And that's all. Expect a video about either the Knicks or the Wizards or my playoff predictions in the next few weeks. Like, subscribe, and see you next time.